talk about graphics processing units as it relates to Kdenlive, and for my part, running on Linux. What I've done since 8-9 months ago, sometime in March, April, I started looking at Kdenlive and other video editing utilities to decide what I was going to use, and I picked Kdenlive. And the first task was to then go ahead and configure my graphics processing unit, the GPU, and configure it for Kdenlive, because it does require some configuration. For the most part, I was going to start with, and I have, with the rendering option. That means that's that rendering button that you click when you want to write it out to file, the video clips out to file. And turned out to have not been complicated at all, with the caveat that with so many possible configurations out there running Linux with Kdenlive, which is what I'm limited to, out of choice. I mean, I can faithfully report what I see on my configuration, and it being Linux and Kdenlive, chances are that it will apply quite easily to other configurations, but I'm not willing to say this is how you do it unless I've first tried it myself, which leads us back to my setup here. And let's start with I have the Nook 11, and the model is down here. It'll be down in the description if you want to do any comparisons. So I have the Nook 11, this is the model number, and this is the GPU that goes with it, which is the Iris. So I did what I usually do, is I go to Google and I put in a question: how to update Debian 12 to include everything I need to support the Iris GPU on the Nook 11, and I got an answer. And it's a how-to for Ubuntu, which pretty much has no differences that I could tell. It was applied very closely to Debian 12, which is what I'm running. And here's the video, and this will also be in the description under the video, so you can copy the URL from there. You don't have to worry about it. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is install the drivers needed, the packages needed from the apt repository for integrating the GPU for the Iris with Kdenlive. Step number 1. I've already done this, so there's no work being done here, just so you can see what's involved. And then the second one is this one. There we go. So all the software is now installed. And on to the next section. Okay, so that being said, let me get rid of this and start Kdenlive. This is my brand new Kdenlive, as you can see down here, 25.12.0. Actually, this is the latest app image. So the .0 here is the, I believe this is the stable release of this particular version. When you look on the Kdenlive download page, you'll see that the actual version number on the package is similar, but not exactly this string. And I'm just going to open, takes it a moment. So I'm running the app image, and as you can see, alrighty, I'm gonna make this a little bit smaller just in case I need to bring something here on the side. And this is indeed 25.12.0, and this is the app image package running. So I picked one of my videos. This one came from my personal blog, and it's got all kinds of touristy things about Garibaldi in it. In any case, it also represents video clips in the workspace that have more than just a little. It's not a lot, but it's not a little either. Title clips, I've got a clip that I reverse. It's the background, so I reverse parts of it. So there's some work to be done. And the thing with the GPU, there is a way to involve the GPU in rendering the project monitor here, if you want to see how things come up. But I'm not at the level of complexity yet where this is necessary. This runs just fine. And so what I focused on for this session is simply configuring Kdenlive to render a project that's in the workspace here, and on we go. So I'll click on render, and I will make it a little more visible. It's kind of hard to see here sometimes. I'll make this a huge dialog box so it obscures all the noise behind it. Okay, so the changes I had to make, one of the things that was important for me was, now this menu has changed. They've reorganized the little sections in it. No big deal. It's not hard to find, but we were here in the last few sessions. It was configured for Alpha VP8 because it was less than 4K in video resolution and quality, and if it had been 4K or more, it would have been VP9. And that's all that I have to say about it. Basically, I picked it and it works. Here, the only option that I found that that accepts the VA API and actually knows what to do hardware-wise while the encoding and rendering is going on is this, and this comes out as an MP4, which doesn't support the alpha channel and transparency, which for me makes perfect sense, because once the full video is rendered, whether it's an MP4 or a .webm, which does support transparency, I couldn't figure out what meaning transparency in a rendered video has. This is not magic. In order to have transparency, the platform that's displaying the video also has to support then the same technology that would show something behind where it was transparent. It's not going to show my desktop, it's going to show something else. And on YouTube right now, this is done with black, basically, where you have transparency in your video and you're at the bottom layer, and you're actually showing, and it's transparent what you're trying to show. It shows up as black, and that's that. I don't know enough about the subject matter to even speculate, so let's not waste time on that. So we're no longer for this purpose doing video with alpha and either VP8 or VP9 or whatever you need to choose. We are doing the VA-API H.264 that comes out as an MP4 file. So that takes care of this menu. We're doing the full project down here. We are definitely showing more options. And more options is over here on the right. And we're doing both video and audio. I click this. I don't really know much about what this does, but it sounds good to me. In other words, these are not the things I'm focusing on right now. But here is where it gets interesting. Let's skip the encoder for a moment and go to the parallel processing, which is where the hardware gets to participate. The Iris GPU gets to actually encode and render parts of the work for the total project of rendering a file. So I did some experimentation on a couple of videos, and I came up with 5 threads. I've got 8 threads available. In other words, this is a 4-core, 2 threads per core, basically 4-core i7 x86, an Intel thing. And at 5 threads, it got me the best performance. If I increased further, I could have given it 8 threads, but the difference in performance is not that significant at all. So I brought it back down to 5 threads. And then I went... My understanding of Kdenlive is it renders 1 frame at a time. And so for every single frame, which could be a few hundred frames, it could be a few thousand frames, it could be way more. For every frame, it has to first do all of the effects on all of the clips in the... let me get this out the way for a moment. So if you... Yeah. All the clips here in the project workspace and all of the effects have to be applied first before it can actually do the encoding and rendering. And so the exception is this part here, which I'm not touching yet and really cannot say much. Basically, it involves putting in the configuration that will create preview versions of this, which are rendered the same way as the full render, and where the GPU does participate. But I'm not touching that yet, so this session does not cover this at all. I'm simply covering what we're doing with actual full rendering of the project, or even partial rendering if you're into that. So I played with that a little, not knowing as much Again, no, not a lot of background at all, but I figured if there are 5 threads that are throwing data at the Iris GPU, then therefore 5 threads on the encoding side kind of made sense to me, and I left it at that because I couldn't see it at the level of what I'm doing here. I couldn't see much difference between 5 threads for the encoders or 3, which to me means it's not the bottleneck. Whatever effect this does have, before it has an effect, it has to become a little bit of a bottleneck before I can start making sense of what to do here. So that's my starting point. Please, when you look at your configuration, do your own experimentation here. There's no way that these numbers exactly match what you absolutely need in your project. So, and if you don't, you don't. Don't blame me. Oh, you can go ahead and blame me. I don't care. Bottom line, set the configuration for the file that's being produced to include this. This is the only option that I found that supports a VA-API. There might be more here, but I don't see them. And this section is the hardware. So this used to be further down below here, this option, but they brought it up. And as far as I could tell, that's the only option for here. There it is. This is the only option for VA API, which will use the GPU for parts of the project that it can in rendering the file, that include encoding and parallel processing during rendering. And that's about it. Then there's good news and bad news. So once you start rendering this, and you're using the hardware, to me it seems like it's a little different. Obviously it's in reality it's different, but in terms of how things are showing up on the screen, let's just go ahead and start the rendering at least. Where are we? We are here. We are at the top of the screen, and let's go ahead and render to file. The output file already exists. That's fine. Override it, and it's starting. And it's, if you remember, it first tries to figure out how long it's going to take. So system monitor. Do I have a system monitor? Yes, I do. Okay. Let me exit here. Okay, I don't know why it gave me that turning thing. It doesn't matter. Administration, system monitor, and here we are. So, take a look at this. One of the nice things that I did notice is, with the app image that I'm using for Kdenlive, every once in a while it does increase a minor version. It looks like a lot of work has been done successfully with what happens to the system when you've got this situation. You're running between 97% busy CPUs, and before, like 6 months ago, this would cause crashing on Kdenlive and sometimes Linux. And since then, I've gone through 3 or 4 iterations of the app image, and now this was with the regular version that I started with from the app repository that came with Debian 12. When I moved to app image, there have been 2-3 additional minor revision number changes, and this seems to have improved the heavy usage of the threads and what happens as it runs out of threads or they're overloaded seems to have improved drastically. Every once in a while, Kdenlive does something that seems to me like, wait, this is not right. And I just exit and restart it, or I reboot the system. But it's like once every few days instead of once every few hours. And believe me, that makes a huge difference for me anyways. So now it's rendering, and you can see that it's whipping along at tremendous speeds, and 1 FPS. Other projects that I started, and actually let's do that. Let me show you. The, Typically it starts at something like 15 FPS rendering into a file, or 25 FPS, and then it slows down a bit, but I've never actually seen it start like this. So let's move this off to the side, and let me abort the job, and clean up the job, and let's render a different file. So get out of the render menu and file, open recent, and this is the video I did a few days ago, so it's reading it in, and this is what the system looks like with Kdenlive just breathing. It's not doing anything else. And I'm going to look at my taskbar to see if I'm actually doing anything beyond the simple screen recorder is keeping it. Some of this busy activity is the simple screen recorder with which I'm recording this. I've got a few browsers open, a file manager, and an edit, and that's about it. So let's move this aside and let's start the render going. And we're doing VA API. We are doing, so this is a different file now, and I'm interested in seeing if the system monitor shows something a little different. Again, 5 threads for encoding, 5 threads for the parallel processing, and I start the render, and let's see what happens. So you can see I started around here. This looks a little bit less busy, like by 5% maybe 10%. You notice everything here is not really 99, 100%. It's actually a little lower. And once it has its estimates here for how long it's going to take, the characteristic of these threads is going to change visibly, and you'll see it. And it might actually start any moment now. But let's wait patiently. If this takes a long time, I'll simply clip out this video that we're making right now. I'll just shorten this period so you don't have to watch me staring at the screen for 5 minutes. It does sometimes take a couple of minutes. So in the meantime, I'm recording the webcam session on my phone because it's an added drain on the resources here on my desktop if I recorded it as a with, inside of what simple screen recorder is tracking here. So just wait patiently for it to start. Oh, it started already. Ha! Nice. Okay. So without my actually noticing it, because I was busy talking, this actually starts, is showing this an hour and 42 minutes. And if I remember correctly, and this is with the hardware GPU participating. And this might seem like bad news, but this is actually the good news, because without the hardware GPU participating in the encoding and the rendering, this comes out, well, I did a few times. For this file, this came out one time at 17 hours something. That was an outlier. The actual time that it estimated was started with 5 hours something, and most of the times that I was rendering this, it actually started out at like a little bit less than 5 hours. But the actual time that it took was between 5 and 6 hours. This is with no GPU participation. And the real number wound up, and I've got a note for this written down here before I forget, excuse me. I'm not sure. I did write it down, but never mind. So, the point I'm making here is, for the few experiments that I made on the GPU participation in rendering the file, there's a factor of 3 involved there. Something that was not estimated. I actually did a few cycles where I would start the render, then go shopping, have breakfast, go check my mailbox. This is all very close by here, and come back, and it still had a little bit more to go. So, because these estimates that it shows on the top line there, they're not precise, and I don't think they're meant to be, but it's not bad. I mean, it'll miss by 50% or maybe 10%. This project, if I remember correctly, took about an hour and almost 2 hours. So the estimate was not that bad, whereas the software version was like 3 times slower, where I did the render without the help of the GPU. So I'm going to keep this here, even if and I've seen a couple of files where it doesn't make much difference in whether or not I don't gain that much from the hardware. And my fairly safe speculation is because the 8 threads that are running, which would be mostly the 3 threads that are not participating in the rendering, they have a lot of work to do with the effects and transformations and compositions and whatever it was that was in the video clip that I was rendering, that the GPU turned out not to be as helpful as it would if there were other effects. Which gets me to the final point of this, which is the work that Kdenlive has to do on the way to handing off data for encoding and rendering during the render process, depends heavily on what kind of effects, how many clips, what were you doing, what these clips are trying to do in the project workspace, And at some point in time, the actual rendering to a file or the encoding that happens before, it simply doesn't help because there's so much other work that Kdenlive needs to do, and that's the way that is. But it's always faster and never slower, ever. Well, I've been playing with this for a while, for a few days now. I suspect that 3-4 months from now, I'll know a hell of a lot more. So hopefully, I'm gonna stop this. I don't need the file, and it's just heating up the corner in the room there. That is a joke. It actually runs very nicely. Where are you? Abort job. Aborted. Cleanup. And close the render. And I'm not sure why sometimes it looks like something changed that needs to be saved, and sometimes it doesn't. I just click on save. These are all things that I'm not just not willing to put the time in right now because I do want to focus on video. This attitude that I have, the way I deal with the video projects now, it actually does bite me somewhere every once in a while. For example, exactly where we are now, where I would have spent a hell of a lot less time developing the videos if I had started involving the GPU maybe a couple of months ago. But I had started with, I believe, is the right approach. I'm going to do Kdenlive, and I'm not going to worry about the GPU right now because I need to get into Kdenlive, and I don't want to waste time playing with hardware configurations. As it turned out, it took really just a few minutes, as you saw on the couple of items I had to change on the render menu. But after that, I continued using Kdenlive without the GPU and completely forgot about the whole issue until I had to deal with a render job that takes 6 hours. And I said, okay, hold on. Why don't I go buy a GPU? And then a light lit up in my brain and says, Andrew, you have a GPU. It's called the Iris. So it was actually pretty funny. So that's it for today. I will see you the next time, and I hope you have a wonderful holiday season and very happy new year. Adios.